welcome to Messages of Hope. I'm your host, Jill Lublin, and my intention is to give you messages of hope, literally inspiration to help your life be better, run smoother, and feel more compassion. Tonight we're going to do it with Gary Malkin, and he is the founder of Wisdom of the World. Gary, welcome.
Great being here, Jill.
So I know, I've known you many years and so blessed to know you as a musician, as a composer, as a creator of, gosh, how many albums? 12? 12 albums. How did you get started with composing? Was this like in your blood? How did it start?
You know, my mother found me playing one of those little toy chord organs when I was 5 years old. And I literally found harmony and melody, and my ear naturally was drawn to it. And played instantly, and my mother came to pick me up, and the friend said, I didn't know that he played the piano, and she said, I didn't know either. Better get the kid a piano. And what I did was I took to it like a moth to flame. There was no one in my family that played music, and I learned really, really quickly that when you add music to any situation, it literally changes the environment. And I had a typical dysfunctional, chaotic Jewish family in New York. And every time I played piano, I actually learned that it chilled everybody out quite a bit. So I learned early on that music had a profound effect on people's emotions and lifestyle.
And so how did that parlay into a career for you? I mean, what happened? How did it start?
I grew up in the milieu of Broadway. I was in the suburbs of New York, and I fell in love with Broadway and with Leonard Bernstein and the New York Philharmonic, and I had a lot of talent. And basically, wanted to be a composer when I was around 8 or 9 years old. When I was 11 years old, I was sick with a cold, and I was watching what they called the $1 Million Movie. It was they had 5 days of playing the same movie every day during the day, and I was sick and watching this movie, and it was a movie called The Miracle Worker. Have you heard that?
Yes, of course.
Patty Duke
Classic.
and Bycroft. And I'm at the scene, and every time I say this, everybody knows what scene I'm talking about. When Helen Keller finally gives up fighting at the water pump and finally demonstrates that she's been taking in how to do this, right? And so what happens is, at that moment when she finally shows that she can learn from Annie Sullivan, I noticed in the background this high string line. And because I was so sensitive to music, I noticed this was happening, and then before I knew it, I was sobbing like a baby. My mother walks in and says, "What's the matter? What's the matter? Are you sick?" And I think it was the first time in my life I'd ever cried for someone else's suffering. And the next 3 days, I made believe I was sick so I could listen to the score.
Oh.
And that was when I decided, I want that kind of power. I want the power to be able to subliminally go under people's spirits and souls and drop in and actually awaken their emotions in a way where they don't even know it. Because I knew that that's what the score was doing for me. And that's when I really decided. And I went for it.
Well, your whole career has been a demonstration of that. And I know one of the culmination projects for you has been something called Graceful Passages. Tell us about that. What is that?
You know, I had before Graceful Passages, I had a 25-year career where I was scoring a television show called Unsolved Mysteries for about 14 seasons. I did major motion pictures with orchestras around the world. I've done over 1,000 commercials with regional and national ad agencies. But every time I would do either a pro bono project or a socially responsible documentary, I'd go to bed at night and I would think, now this is how I want to feel. It was a sense of really like the ball hitting the bat and a home run. It was like, what if I could actually use my skill and my talent to make a difference in people's lives?
You mean instead of writing jingles?
Yeah, instead of selling Hidden Valley Ranch dressing or Gallo wine, which I was doing for years. Nothing wrong with that, but I started to really feel like, is that all there is?
Right.
After making all the money I could make. And then I had a horrible accident. A bicycle accident. And then a month later, it was one of those summers of Job where my wife at the time decided that she didn't want to stay in the marriage. We had a beautiful 6-year-old daughter. Essentially, everything that could have happened to me got pulled out from under me, except for, thank God, my daughter who didn't die. But I had a very serious accident. And during that period, I started to really evaluate, like, well, wait a minute. This life is not a rehearsal. And if I'm going to use my skills, I have to live as if I know that it can matter. And I decided to think, then a dear friend of mine, Michael Stillwater, one of the pioneers in music healing, came to me and said, you know, I've been working with people who have been dying, and every time I create music in that setting, it basically awakens what they call the gold standard in the end of life. People start apologizing, they start appreciating, they start crying, they let go, they start to admit that the person they love is dying, and they, instead of fight it, they actually allow it. Right? Mm-hmm. And he said, if I were going to die, the person whose music I'd want to hear is yours, which was an incredibly sweet thing to say. So we actually started to explore what would happen if we recorded somebody speaking from their heart and we scored it like a major motion picture. And nobody had ever done that before. Until that time, there'd been like vapid New Age music and vapid guided imagery. But what we did was we had Ram Dass and Thich Nhat Hanh and Elizabeth Kubler-Ross and Rabbi Zalman Schachter, world-class wisdom keepers.
Desmond Tutu also, right?
No. I recorded Desmond in the years subsequent to that.
Okay.
But we basically combined the art of film scoring with the power of presence as expressed through authentic spoken word. And it was an alchemical combination that we've actually discovered represents what many people think is an innovation in cultivation tools for emotional and spiritual intelligence. Another way of saying that is that when you listen to this on a daily basis, it can actually deepen your synaptic responses, your neuronal pathways, to the witness within rather than the fight-flight response. It actually can calm you down into a deeper sense of appreciation for life itself rather than this sense of victim and sense of half-empty, if you know what I mean.
So it's not just for people who are dying, it's for people who are living. And to live better.
Exactly. The Dalai Lama says the moment we start dying is the moment we're born. And the truth is that most of us are fighting the fact that we're fragile, impermanent, and not here forever. If all I wanted to do, Jill, was spend the rest of my life focusing on helping the culture come to terms with the fact that we live and then we die, I'd have my life cut out for me. Because as you know, when they tried to actually advance the Advance Directive and Living Will thing and the whole agenda in the last year, it turned into death panels. Right? All that was the world's fear of the reality of planning in advance for the fact we die. My life has been more about expanding the role that media can play in waking us up to what matters most, in inspiring us to connect to who we really are. That's why I started Wisdom of the World. So go ahead.
Well, when you were interviewing some of these people, because these are pretty big names you mentioned, tell me a story. What happened? Like just either a oh my God story, I can't believe it was so embarrassing, or something touching. Whatever you remember. What do you remember?
You know, the process of creating Graceful Passages was during the 3 years after this horrible time when my wife left the family, the marriage, when I was really in such a death of my own, coming to terms with it. And I remembered when Zalman Schachter, the rabbi, the leader of the Jewish Renewal Movement, spent the day with me. I mean, one of the greatest gifts of this is that I've been spending time with these extraordinary people.
Yes.
And I get in the studio and I say, I'm dying. Tell me, what do you say? What do you say? And invariably, they'd speak to me, and metaphorically, I had died. I had $1 million house, and I had all the trappings of great success, and all of it was sort of shattered after this divorce and this accident. And I had the most phenomenal teachers basically taught to me about the metaphor of dying as a way to fully live. So when Rabbi Zalman spoke, I just started to sob, and it was a healing. It was amazing. One of the things that was truly extraordinary is Ram Dass. We did the actual first recording after his stroke.
Yes.
And we recorded a number of, about an hour and a half, and that had endless amounts of space in it because for 5 minutes he had to collect his post-stroke mind to figure out how to speak his next line. And so an hour and a half compressed down to 6 minutes after you took all the space out of it. It was just a
amazing
thrill to work with these amazing people. And it's evolved into, I've recorded now 90 wisdom keepers from around the world, including Desmond Tutu and Christian Northrup and Joan Borisenko and Father Thomas Keating and all these, and Deepak Chopra and Bob Proctor. And I basically don't give up until I get moved to tears and chills. That's what I use as my litmus paper test.
Do you have a favorite person?
Desmond Tutu.
Why?
Well, actually, it's a tie between Desmond and Bob Proctor. With all due respect, I was not crazy about The Secret. I wasn't crazy about how materialistic it was, and I wasn't crazy about Bob Proctor's contribution. So I wasn't really very interested in recording him, to be honest. And my partner said, "You got to record him, and Bob loves your work." And I went down to record him. I could not believe how deep this human being is. And he went to such a deep level. Even his CEO had the jaw drop to the floor and went, "I've never heard this voice before. Wait till you hear what we've created." It's going to be a wisdom film. This is what we're creating.
Yeah.
We're taking these audio tracks of spoken word and music, and we're turning them into 5 to 7 minute wisdom tracks and adding time-lapse images to turn them into wisdom films. And we're calling it entertainment, media, medicine for the mind, sanctuaries for the soul. And that's what we're about to launch to the world, actually, to global markets in the next few months.
So that's your whole new genre of entertainment, right?
Right.
And really, you've created a whole new category.
Exactly.
Yes, always been a pioneer.
Well, for me, I've looked through the lens of a composer. Music is the universal language of emotion.
Yes.
So all my life, for me, it's like add water and stir. It's add music and feel. And so I've always lived my life through the lens of what's missing here in terms of the resonance that we have as human beings who are connected to our hearts and our spirits. And if we're not connected here, as far as I'm concerned, we're not connecting. If we're not connected in some deeper level than just our minds or our agendas or what do I want from you and what do you want from me, that's not what I call the best of what it means to be human. So, so that's what Wisdom of the World's about, is to create media. Instead of dumbing down or frightening or appealing to the lowest common denominator, it's really about creating music that connects people to their heart and remembers how precious, miraculous this life is.
So, it's an interesting concept, and it's an important one, Gary, and obviously you're bringing it forth. But what do you say to the person who's watching this going, yeah, well, it sounds good, but I don't have time. I'm taking care of my children. I'm working every day. I'm trying to keep it all together and keep my house and keep my spirit alive and happy and whole in troubled times. What do we do?
So, these pharmaceutical ads where they have these long lists of side effects at the end of them, right? And if you're going to die from this or that.
Take this pill for anxiety, but you might have depression and you might commit suicide.
Who doesn't have time for 5 minutes to immerse yourself in beauty of wisdom, beauty of sound, and beauty of images, in a way that would change the direction of your day and the quality of your exchanges, your connection to your own commitment to speak right action, right words, right livelihood, in a way that would change your day? Who doesn't have time for that? As far as I'm concerned, in this day and age, the most challenging thing that faces humanity, as far as I'm concerned, is not climate change. It's human fragmentation of our emotional and spiritual intelligence. It's the subjugation of our hearts and spirits as being something I don't have time for. That is what's created the chaos that this world is in. And I'm saying, let's address the collusion that media has in serving this chaos and this incoherence. Let's address the role that media is playing in actually keeping the status quo so that yada yada is happening instead of connecting. And that's what I say.
Yeah. Well, it's all based in fear, right? We're thrown these stories constantly where you're giving more wisdom, more time. And I love the 5-minute segments because the truth is people don't have as much time. That is true.
Well, in the old days, it used to be you go to a workshop, or you go to a special talk, you read a book. In 5 minutes, I can prove that you can go more deep in an immersive way with spending 5 minutes with gorgeous images and beautiful music and Desmond Tutu or all these people speaking, than it would take to go and say a whole evening or a day workshop. It's actually an accelerated and very efficient use of our time. So don't get me started. I'm so into this. I'm so excited about it because there are a lot of film composers that I know in Los Angeles, because that's what I used to do exclusively, who have asked me, please, could I score Eckhart Tolle? Because we actually are negotiating the rights to get The Power of Now in audio form. And this one really famous film composer is saying, I'll do it for free. Just